Hey everybody, Red Mage here. Welcome back to this series where I go through different RPG products that I have and give them a quick flip through and review. In this one, I'm going to be doing a little bit of a shorter video because I don't want to go through all of these in too much detail, and two of them are pretty short. But I'm going to be covering 3 GM resources that I think are really, really cool. This is sort of almost a follow-up to the last video that I did on the 3 GM resources, the tomes that every GM should have. The first one I'm going to be covering here is the Nomicon, which is a companion piece to the Tome of World Building, which itself is a companion piece to the Tome of Adventure Design. So the 3 of them together kind of have a complete GM's toolkit. With this one, you have naming. The Nomicon, it's all about names. It's a really, really fantastic book. It's 354 pages, and I'll get back to it in a second here. The next one I want to cover is Hobgoblin, which is an old school style zine. This is for, it's created by the creator of the Bay of Spirits, which is a setting that I've reviewed before on my channel, and it was awesome. I think it's one of, it's not that high of a view count in terms of my videos. I think it should be because the setting, more people need to see it. It's super cool. But this is a really cool old school zine with beautiful art, great ideas. I'll come back to it. It's sort of system agnostic. And then the last one is, the last one is Carcass Crawler issue 4, which is the official old school essential zine. I've reviewed Carcass Crawler issues 1, 2, and 3. This is number 4, which covers deities and cults, the arcane bard and halfling classes. And then you've got some additional tables like strange brews and things like that, which I'm really, really happy about. And the cover art is great. You've got this creepy cult and a thing they're summoning or trying to stop. Probably summoning. You know, this guy's melting away, and so is this guy, but most likely they're still trying to summon it. Anyway, let's jump back to the Nomicon, because it's really, really cool. I like this a lot. It's a book of names. Now, this is obviously by Matt Finch. Now, the names in this book are really cool. It's divided into a bunch of different chapters, obviously. You've got the introduction and sort of how to use this book, omissions, things that are left out, and sort of the methodology behind the naming groups and all of that. And that's really helpful, too, because you get a sense of what's going on. Then you get Chapter 2, Primordial and Divine Names. And you've got Creator Deity names, Eldritch God names, how to name other deities and planar location names, Angelic names, Demonic names, Archdemonic names, or Evil God epithets. That's always really cool. I like epithets. You got Chapter 3, which is Continent names, Empire names, and then you'll notice that each of the names of the chapters are sort of like a version of an actual cultural or we get ethnic background or something like that. So you have like a language group, so Anglish instead of English, or so Anglish personal names, Anglish terrain names. You have Arabish, you have Bretonnian, which I like. That reminds me of Castle British. I don't know why exactly. From oh goodness, I keep on thinking of a Calibeth, but it's not just a Calibeth. What's that whole series called? Why is my mind blanking on that series? I played them so much as a kid. I never got very far in any of them. Wow. Okay. Well, anyway, there's a whole series of games with Castle British, Lord British. Calibeth is technically the first game in the series. Oh well. You have Celtic Gallic, and then you have Dwarven, which is kind of funny in the middle there. East Asiatic, Elder Weirdish, Dreamlandish, Chthonic. I like that. Then you have Elven, Hispanic, Eurovesian, Hellenica, Italican, Metallic, Nanscrit, Norslic, Ruslivic, Sequitorial, Stygian or Egyptic, Teutonic, Troubadouric, and then names for legendary places, city and settlement names, and then monster names. At the very end, you've got titles, personal epithets, and some miscellaneous tables. So super, super cool. I mean, you've just got more than you'd ever need. I'm going to go through just a few examples here, because you can see it's not like a lot of books will give you just a name, a list of names, and you just pick a list of names. This book gives you role tables and basically prefix-suffix forms. Now, there are some just straight up names and titles that you roll, but for the most part, you'll see it's like this sort of thing, right? So an Eldritch God name, you're going to roll 2d100, and you're going to get a name like Amugutu, right? Or Haruchok, or Nirakutu, or something like that, right? You're going to roll these together, and you're going to get a name with a prefix-suffix form, first part, second part. And that's really what you get through this whole book for names. So it's, in that sense, it's way more useful than just a list of names, because you can create your own, you can combine them, and obviously you could add more parts if you want. So you could have, if you want a really long name, you could use a 4-part name. If you want to use just a short one, like Shai, right? Or Cha, or Gatu, you could, and then you have a name right there. You don't need to do the first part, second part. So you can use this book as you want, or you could combine, roll twice on the first part and twice on the second. You could have like Omtar Harandan, right? You'd have a really long name. You definitely do that too. I think that's cool. I think that's really, really cool. And you get these epithets too, which are awesome. The angelic epithets are so cool. The candle, the crown, the flame, the helm, the eye. That's so cool. And then, of course, you're going to get demonic names and demonic or archgod epithets. Tormentor of planes, forager of dimensions, the remaker of wizards, the ransacker of stars, the displacer of portals, the despoiler of seas. That's cool. Continent names and how to form them. Anglish. So here's what you get. So Anglish personal names. Anglish masculine personal names. You can roll in either column for a name, or you can combine them. So here you also just have basically like 2 D100s for Anglish personal names masculine. And then you have English feminine personal names, again, 2 D100 because you have 2 columns for those. Then you get terrain names, and those are prefix suffix, right? First part ending. And then you've got English terrain sinister sounding. So the first ones were just generic. Then you have sinister sounding ones, Beetlewold, Grumval, Mall Hallow. And then you've got English terrain names for optional endings, like forests, marsh, swamps, mountains, hills, and rivers, right? So if you want to, that's so cool to have these in addition. So if you want a place that's going to be foresty, well, then you should use one of these D20s. You call it Wold, or Wald, or Weald, or Wold, or Firth, or Forest, or Dare, or Copse, right? If you add that to a name, it's going to sound foresty because those words relate to forests in English, right? And the same thing is true for Fell, or Mar, or Guan, or Merc, in terms of swamp or marshes. So cool. And then the same thing is going to be true for each of these different ethnic or language groups. Now this is interesting, and he makes a note here, like Arabic and Persian are completely different language groups, right? So they're completely different. So this is kind of like, it's sort of self-consciously looking at just regions in the world and putting it all together, right? So like, okay, we're going to do an Arabian Nights kind of game. Well, you're going to be using some Persian names, you're going to be using some Arabic names. You use the Arabish table, right? Sort of the idea. Arab-ish, right? That's kind of the idea. Anglish. It's not English, it's kind of like it. And that's the idea throughout this whole book, which I think is great because, unless you want to be very, 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 very specific, your worlds are not going to have the particular languages of our worlds, and so the names can be slightly different, the accents can be slightly different. I always tell my players that. They're like, oh, I can't really do a good X accent, and I'm like, well, that's fine. Whatever your character ends up doing, that's the accent for your world, right? that's your accent. And they're like, oh yeah, okay, that's fair. So that's kind of cool. Anyway, the Nomicon is great. I highly recommend you guys check it out. Again, it's a great follow-up to the first one. Now, names are one of those things that some people have no problems with. They can just easily do names. Some people have, you can just go online and Google, like Persian names, and you have a whole list. Or you're like, with the internet, you have access to infinite names. So that's one of those things that it doesn't require as much creativity as like building a world. And so I think it's less useful objectively than the Tome of World Building or the Tome of Adventure Design. But that doesn't mean that it's not useful. And I'm really glad that I have it, and I'm definitely going to use it because it's awesome. I mean, it's so cool to have all of these names here, and it's a great follow-up work. But again, I think that if you're going to pick one of the 3 to skip, of the Tome of Adventure Design, the Tome of World Building, and the Nomicon, you can probably skip the Nomicon. But it's good. It's still really, really good. Don't get me wrong. And I think it's cool. So again, I'll put a link below to where you can get it, and I do recommend you guys check it out. All right, the next is Hobgoblin. I'm very excited about this. This is Pay What You Want, I think, on DTRPG. I'll put a link where you can get it. This is so cool. It's by Randy M. And it's just a zine kind of about his world, but kind of also just with a bunch of ideas generally for a world. So you have the Rhyme Fort, which is a Norstead trading post. And look at the art here. The cartography is great. you have these little bits of information, right? Hobgoblin, an old school style zine, focused on storytelling, resources, and survival. Nostalgic, evocative, fun. Standalone pages, random interconnectivity, 100% real art and text, 0 AI. And no adherence to self-imposed graphic design standards. That is, excessive font styles. And then here's the typography used. Typos likely. That's great. Is that a dagger I see before me, right? So daggers. That's awesome. Everyone knows what a dagger is and what it does. D4 damage. Everything else is based upon common assumptions and vernacular or geek speak. So basically the whole book is like that, right? We know what a dagger does. Your system of choice is going to be D4 damage. Maybe it's going to do something slightly different in your system, but that's fine. We all know what it does, and so there's no need to restate it here. Right? That's at this point for most GMs, unless you're brand new, which there's a lot of brand new GMs out there, it's not that hard to switch from system to system, and so you can kind of present neutral stuff and it's totally fine. I really like system neutral adventures because it's not hard to just add in the technical details later. At least I have never found it to be really. Surviving the Wilderlands, you're gonna have 5 ways you're gonna die and how to avoid it, which is great. Hobgoblins and how they work in this particular world, but it's a great way of presenting them here. The Ghosts of Goblin Hall, which is sort of a short story. The Axeman, it's an ad. News of the Haunt. Coinage and how they work. Seasons, which is really cool. Frozen, which is a random scene. You just have this put in your world. The Raven's Bane, which is a mercenary faction you can add into your world. Black Spruce, a particular kind of flora in your game. How to harvest it, what its use should be, mundane and fantastical. Just a ton of stuff like this. You get the point. Here's a little barrow and a hexen barrows. A hexen barrow field and a subterranean route through them. Tamarack Cache. Spore points and how that works. A really cool rule set for trying to track animals, which is really, really cool, like developing a thing so they have to roll and they have to travel. And so it kind of makes tracking animals into a minigame. You could make that actually into a fun portion of your game. Rules for bears and bulls, or bull moose, I should say. Ursa, the different kinds of species and their paw prints and all this stuff. So I'm not going to go through the rest, but you guys get the point. It's a really cool zine, right? Really, really cool. Again, I think it's pay what you want on DTRPG. I'll put a link to where you can get it. I highly recommend you guys get this zine and keep an eye on the next one because there will be another one released soon. In fact, I'll skip to the very end and we have a little preview of it. Yeah, the Helot Highway, which is the next issue, which is Dead Road to Tetropolis. Beneath a blood-red obsidian sky, a deep canyon stretches for miles towards a faux horizon and the fabled domain of Tetropolis, home of the Helots, or Helots. Paved in bone dust, the Helot Highway runs along the canyon floor between towering sandstone cliffs, past the ruins of a Helot outpost near where a frozen river of quicksilver cascades down from the escarpment above. So it's not necessarily our world. This looks definitely like Underdark or some sort of other plane or dimension, but it's really, really cool. Anyway, Hobgoblin, I recommend you guys check this one out. Really cool. And then finally, Carcass Crawler issue 4. This is, as I said, a really cool little zine here. Great art. If you know the Carcass Crawlers, you'll know, and basically all of Old School Essentials stuff is really, really good. Necrotic Gnome, they know what they're doing. Here's what you have in this book. You have some character classes, deities, and cults. So 4 deities along with their cults, which is really cool, and the spells of the clerics of those cults. A bunch of new monsters, 10 new spells, some new potions and rules for brewing potions, and then a short adventure at the very end. Halfling Heartsinger and the Halfling Reeve. Great art throughout. The Arcane Bard, which is by Gavin Norman. This is a great class. I really like this one. Anti-Charm, it's an Arcane Bard. You know what a Bard is. This is not just a regular Bard, though. This is more like, magic usury Bard, and I really like that. Deities and cults, these are so cool. These spells are really, really cool. And again, the art there is so good. That spell, I think that's being described as Redemption, which is a very powerful spell. It's a 5th level cleric spell. Golden light beams from a touched creature's eyes as the caster purges their soul of evil, permanently changing their alignment to lawful. A saving throw, an unwilling subject may save versus spells to resist the change. Chaotic creatures save at +4. If the save succeeds, the caster takes d4 damage per hit die of the target. So you got to be careful to cast it, but it's a powerful spell. And then dispelling the spell can only be done by powerful magic or at the referee's option by performing a special quest. Only intelligent living creatures are affected. It's kind of interesting. Really cool spells there. And then you have the different gods. The Black Alderman, which is really creepy. Cloth Karnath, the Lady of Troubles. Maumb, the Hidden Lord. Yeah. Oh, and Asteris. I missed Asteris, the first one, which is the shining one. So each of these gods and their cults, really cool. I think you guys should check this one out. Again, I'm not going to go through the whole thing because it is pretty short. But as you can see here, here's the whole table of contents. You have the 3 classes, the different gods here, and the spells of each of them. The Mage's Grimoire with new spells and different particular grimoires for those spells. And then rules for creating potions, hiring an alchemist, potion ingredients, and sampling potions and describing potions. And those last tables, potion ingredients, sampling potions, and describing potions, are really, really cool. Especially the sampling potions. Because it's like, what happens if you sample a potion of water breathing? What happens if you sample a potion of fly? And it's like, so not enough to drink it, but just enough to have an effect that players can then piece together, right? So they see a strange potion and they're like, can I taste just a little bit of it? And you go, sure. And you just present it and they go, huh, okay, well, this made my hair stand up, on my arm, all my hair, like it looked like it was floating. Okay, so what kind of a spell would do that? What kind of potion would do that, right? And they can kind of narrow it down. And then once they have that effect, then they know in future. They don't need an alchemist. They don't need to go into town and get the potion identified. They don't have to drink it randomly. They can sample it, and then they know, oh, okay, this is this kind of potion. So they can learn, the players can learn the kinds of potions based on how to sample them. That's a really cool idea. And also their description, right? If you make certain potions consistent in how they're physically described, then the players can get used to it and they'll start to know, okay, this is this kind of potion. And you don't have to tell them, oh, you found a healing potion. Right, you can tell them, oh, you found a red potion or a potion with little, floating caterpillars in it. And they're like, okay, that's definitely a potion of X, whatever it is. And then, of course, the dungeon at the very end, the monsters at the very end, which are all cool. And what I like about this one in particular is that the monsters that are described in this issue are all, or mostly all, used in the final dungeon, which is great. So that way you have a sample of how they should be used right there. All right, well, Carcass Crawler, issue 4, Hobgoblin, an old school style zine, and the Nomicon by Matt Finch. Recommend you guys check out all of them. I'll put links below where you can get them. Again, as I said, a bit of a shorter one today, but just wanted to make sure you guys saw that the Nomicon was out because it was a follow-up to the one that came before. All right, guys, that'll do it. Hope you all have a great day, and I'll see you all in another one.